The moment my mother-in-law set her champagne flute down and looked across the table at my daughter, I knew exactly what was coming. I'd seen that look before. The slow tilt of the head. The small, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. The inhale before she spoke, like she was doing everyone a favor by sharing whatever thought had just crossed her mind. My daughter Sophie was 7 years old and had spent the last 10 minutes carefully arranging the peas on her plate into what she called a pea garden. She was proud of it. She'd even asked my father-in-law to look. "Sophie," my mother-in-law said, her voice carrying that particular sweetness she reserved for moments like this, "Sweetheart, do you know what your cousin Avery is doing this summer?" Sophie looked up. "No. She's enrolled in the Young Scholars Academy. Language immersion, coding, music theory." My mother-in-law reached over and patted Sophie's hand. "It's never too late to start, you know, for children who maybe didn't get the early advantages." The table went quiet. My husband's hand found my knee under the tablecloth. A warning. Or maybe an apology. I wasn't sure anymore which one it was. "Sophie is doing wonderfully," I said. My voice was steady. It had gotten very good at being steady over 6 years of Sunday dinners like this one. "Of course she is." My mother-in-law smiled. "You're doing your best, I'm sure. Working from home, the flexible schedule, it must be so nice to be there for her." She paused. "Even if the structure isn't quite what a more traditional arrangement might provide. Working from home." She'd been saying it for 3 years like it was a polite way of saying unemployed. Like she genuinely believed I spent my days watching television and occasionally answering emails. I looked at Sophie, who had gone back to her pea garden, unbothered, because at 7 she didn't yet understand what didn't get the early advantages meant when an adult said it about you at your grandmother's birthday dinner in front of 12 people. I understood it perfectly. My phone was in my purse. It had been there since I arrived. I'd almost left it in the car. "What kind of structure did you have in mind?" I asked. My mother-in-law's smile widened slightly. She loved when I engaged. It gave her room. "I just mean consistency. Routine. You know how important that is for children's development." She looked around the table for confirmation, and my sister-in-law nodded immediately the way she always did. When parents are distracted, scattered, trying to wear too many hats at once, children feel that instability. They internalize it. "My daughter is not unstable," I said. "No one said she was, sweetheart." Sweetheart? I was 39 years old and she had been calling me sweetheart since the day my husband brought me home to meet his family at this same table. It had taken me years to understand it wasn't affection. It was a diminutive. A reminder of the distance between where she thought she stood and where she thought I did. My husband cleared his throat. "Mom, can we? I'm just saying what everyone is thinking." My mother-in-law refilled her champagne glass. "We love you both. We want the best for Sophie. And I think if we're being honest, there are some real questions about long-term stability. The freelance work, the remote situation, it's not exactly a foundation you can build on, is it? My son works incredibly hard. He deserves a partner who contributes equally, who has real career trajectory, who..." "Diane." My father-in-law's voice was mild. He was always mild. It never stopped anything. "I'm not criticizing. I'm expressing concern." She set her glass down and looked at me directly. "You're a sweet girl. But sweet doesn't pay for Young Scholars Academy. Sweet doesn't build generational wealth. And frankly, at your age, if the trajectory isn't there, it's not coming." "At your age?" Sophie looked up again. She was watching me now. Her small face careful, reading mine the way children do when they sense the adults around them are standing on something fragile. I thought about the 6 years I had sat at this table. The comments about my apartment before we bought our house. The questions about my little projects when I was closing the biggest contract of my career. The time she told my husband at Christmas, in front of me, that she hoped he'd married for love and not obligation, because there were women out there who would have been a real asset to him. I thought about last month, when I found the email. I reached into my purse and took out my phone. "What are you doing?" my mother-in-law asked. "1 second," I said. My husband's hand tightened on my knee. I set the phone face down on the table and looked at my mother-in-law. "You were talking about trajectory," I said. "And stability. And real career contribution." "Yes." "Okay." I picked up my water glass. Tell me about your consulting business. Something shifted in her expression. Small, fast, gone. What about it? The one you launched 18 months ago. The organizational development consultancy. I tilted my head the way she always tilted hers. How is that going? It's in a growth phase, she said. And there was a new quality to her voice. Something I had not heard before. These things take time. They do, I agreed. They really do. My sister-in-law was watching me. My father-in-law had put down his fork. What's your point? My mother-in-law asked. I don't have a point yet. I smiled at her. I'm just asking. Since we're talking about career trajectory, since we're talking about what real contribution looks like. This is rude, my sister-in-law said. Is it? I looked at her. She just told me I'm not a real asset to my husband. She implied my daughter is disadvantaged because of me. She has been doing this for 6 years. I paused. But sure. My asking a single question about her business is the rude thing at this table. You're being dramatic, my mother-in-law said, but her voice had changed. We're family. I'm allowed to have concerns. Family. I had known that word was coming. It always came. It was the pass they used to walk through every door they should have knocked on first. I picked up my phone. Your business has 3 clients, I said. 2 of them are friends who are paying you as a favor. Your 3rd client put the contract on hold in January and has not resumed. I turned the phone around. I know this because your 3rd client is a company called Merritt Halloway. And I know their internal status updates because I have been their lead infrastructure consultant for 4 years. They're a large account. I pay attention. The color that left my mother-in-law's face did so very quickly. She stopped. Your proposal is still in their pending folder, I said. I didn't put it there and I didn't move it. I didn't even know it was yours until 3 weeks ago when the account manager mentioned the last name and I asked. I set the phone down. I haven't said anything to them either way about it. That's not what this is. Then what is this? She asked. Her voice was thin in a way I had never heard from her. This is me answering your question, I said. About trajectory, about stability, about what real contribution looks like. My husband was very still beside me. I work from home, I said, because I am a principal engineer at a company that allows it. I have been with them for 9 years. I was promoted to principal at 35, which I understand is fast, and I understand that because they told me it was when they promoted me. I kept my voice conversational, almost gentle. I manage a team of 14 people across 3 time zones. Last year, my team delivered a platform migration that saved the company $11 million in operational costs. And they gave me a bonus that was larger than my husband's annual salary. I say that with love because I am proud of both of us. My sister-in-law made a small sound. I work from home, I continued, because I negotiated that in my contract in 2020 and they agreed because they did not want to lose me to a competitor who was offering it. I work from home because it allows me to be here when Sophie gets off the bus, which I consider important, and which I did not think I had to justify to anyone. My mother-in-law's hands were flat on the table now. The house we live in, I said, which you have described on 3 separate occasions as modest, my words back, not an accusation, I remember clearly, is owned outright. We have no mortgage. We paid it off 2 years ago. My husband knows this. I know this. And until tonight I did not feel the need to share it with the rest of the table. Why are you doing this? My mother-in-law asked. I thought about Sophie arranging her peas. I thought about her looking up and hearing the words early advantages and watching my face to understand what they meant. I thought about the drive home after the Christmas where my mother-in-law had said what she said, and how Sophie had been 4 then, too young to understand, and how next year she would be 8, and the year after that 9, and how children get older and understand more, and how there would be more Sunday dinners and more champagne and more that particular tilted smile. Because my daughter was sitting right there, I said. The table was completely silent. She is 7 years old. She was playing with her food because she is 7 years old and that is a thing 7-year-olds do, and you used it as an opening to imply she is behind. That she has been disadvantaged. That I am the reason. I paused. She was sitting right there. Children are resilient, my mother-in-law said, but weakly. They are, I agreed. They are also perceptive. They absorb everything. And Sophie has been absorbing this table for her entire life. I looked around at everyone quietly. I have let that happen. That's on me. I thought silence was the gracious choice. I thought keeping the peace was what was best for our family. I have been here every Sunday for 6 years, and I have smiled, and I have passed the bread, and I have listened to the questions about my little projects and my flexible schedule and my modest house, and I have said nothing, because I thought if I was patient enough and present enough, eventually this table would see me. My husband put his hand over mine, but tonight she did it in front of Sophie. And that is different. My mother-in-law opened her mouth. "I'm not finished," I said, not unkindly. "You asked about real contribution. About what it means to be an asset. So here it is." I turned my phone screen back toward her. "You sent my husband a message in October. I saw it. He showed me, because we don't have secrets. You told him that you were worried he had made a choice out of sentiment instead of sense. You told him there were women in his life who had more to offer." I set the phone down. He was upset. He wanted to call you immediately. I asked him not to. I told him families have friction and that I could handle it. I shook my head slightly. I should not have handled it quietly. That was another mistake. My sister-in-law was looking at her plate. My father-in-law had aged 5 years in the last 4 minutes. "I am not angry," I said, and I meant it, which surprised me slightly. "I understand that you love your son. I understand that when he brought me home 12 years ago I was 27 and still in graduate school, and I did not look like what you had imagined for him. I understand that you have been waiting for me to prove I was not a risk, and I understand that I made the mistake of letting my quietness look like inadequacy instead of what it actually is, which is a preference for not performing my value for people I thought were already my family." My mother-in-law's eyes were bright. She was not going to cry, I did not think. But something had gone out of her. "I want to stay in this family," I said. "I want Sophie to know her grandparents. I want Sunday dinners. I want all of it. But not like this. Not with her watching me absorb these comments every week and learning that love means accepting treatment that makes you feel small." I picked up my purse. "So I'm going to take her outside for a few minutes. And when I come back, I would like us to try again. Differently. If that's something people are willing to do." I looked at my mother-in-law one more time. "Your proposal at Merritt Halloway," I said. "It's not a bad one. The scope is reasonable. The pricing is too high for where they are right now, but it's adjustable. If you would like advice on how to revise it, I'm genuinely willing to help. That offer is not a bargain and it's not a threat. It's just what I would do for anyone in this family who asked." I stood up, and I held my hand out to Sophie. She took it immediately, because she had been watching the whole time, and children always know when it is time to go. We walked out through the kitchen door into the backyard. My mother-in-law had roses along the back fence, real ones, the kind that took years and attention, and they were in full bloom in the August evening and they smelled extraordinary. Sophie pulled my hand. "Mom." "Yeah, baby. Why did you say all that?" I crouched down so I was at her level. Her face was solemn and attentive. She had my husband's eyes and her own way of taking in information, slow and thorough. Like she was filing it somewhere she could find it later. Because some things needed to be said, I told her. She considered this. Grandma looked scared. "I know. Were you trying to scare her?" "No," I said. And thought about it. "I was trying to be honest. There's a difference. Daddy always says to be honest. He's right." Sophie leaned against my shoulder. She said I didn't get the early advantages. "What does that mean?" I put my arm around her. For a moment I just breathed. "It means she thought you were behind," I said. But she was wrong. "I know I'm not behind," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "My reading level is 5th grade." I laughed. It came from somewhere unclenched in my chest. "Yes, it is. And I can name all the planets and some of the moons." "You can. And I know how to make an omelet." "An excellent omelet," I said. "You make a really excellent omelet." She nodded, satisfied, and looked at the roses. "Mom, can we still come here for dinners?" I rested my chin on the top of her head. The sky was going orange over the fence. "I hope so," I said. "I really hope so." The kitchen door opened behind us. I expected my husband, but it was my father-in-law. He was a quiet man, tall, Someone who had spent 60 years mostly listening. He came and stood beside us and looked at the roses. She grew those from bare root, he said after a while. First winter we lived here. I told her they'd never take. She didn't listen. He shook his head. She doesn't listen to me a lot, actually. I didn't say anything. He looked at me sideways. I didn't know about the business. The state it's in. I think she's embarrassed, I said. Yes. He put his hands in his pockets. She gets like this. When she's scared, she gets like this. Loud and certain, he paused. She was like this when Marcus lost his job the first time, before she told anyone. She was awful to everyone that month and nobody knew why. I thought about that. It doesn't make it okay, I said. No, he agreed. No, it doesn't. He looked at Sophie. Hello there, young lady. Sophie looked up. Hi, Grandpa. What do you know about those roses? She squinted at them. They're pink. They are. What else? They smell nice. They do. He nodded seriously. Your grandmother planted every one of them herself. Some of them didn't make it. Most of them did. He glanced over at me. She works hard at the things she cares about. She just doesn't always know what to do with the things she's afraid of. I stood up. Sophie wandered toward the rose bushes, interested now. Don't touch the thorns, I told her. I know, she said. My father-in-law and I stood together in the warm evening. She's going to need time, he said. With this. What you said in there. I'm not looking for an immediate apology, I said. I'm looking for a change. I know. He nodded slowly. I think you might get it. She's proud. But she's not, he stopped. She wants Sophie in her life. She wants that very much. And I think tonight is going to sit with her in a way that other things haven't. The door opened again and my husband came out. He walked straight to me and I let him. He put his arms around me from behind and rested his forehead against the back of my head. Hi, he said. Hi. I should have said something years ago. Yes, I said. You should have. He tightened his arms slightly. I know. We'll talk about that. I know that too. Sophie turned around from the roses and saw us and made an exaggerated face. Ew. Ew, my husband agreed, and let go of me to scoop her up instead. And she shrieked with laughter and the sound of it went up into the orange sky. My mother-in-law appeared in the kitchen doorway. She stood there for a moment. She looked smaller than she had at the table. She was still wearing the birthday dinner blouse, the good one, the cream silk one she'd sent me a photo of beforehand to show me what she was planning to wear, which I'd understood even then as a quiet act of territory. She looked at my husband and Sophie. She looked at my father-in-law. Then she looked at me. She did not say anything, but something in her face moved in a way I had not seen before. I did not know what to call it exactly. It was possibly the beginning of something. There's still cake, she said finally. Her voice was different, not warm yet, but different. I looked at her for a moment. 6 years of Sunday dinners. Every quiet comment, every champagne flute set down with intention, every sweetheart that was not a sweetheart. And underneath all of it, apparently, a woman who was afraid and did not know what to do with the fear except aim it. Okay, I said. Sophie wriggled down from my husband's arms. Is it chocolate? My mother-in-law blinked. It is. With the buttercream or the other kind? A pause. The buttercream. Sophie walked past her into the kitchen without ceremony and my mother-in-law watched her go. When she looked back at me, I thought she was going to say something. Something prepared. Something that had taken her the last 10 minutes to construct. Instead, she just stepped aside to let me through the door. I went in. The dining room was quieter than we'd left it. My sister-in-law was clearing plates. The tension wasn't gone but it had shifted, the way pressure shifts after something finally opens. My father-in-law came in behind me and patted my arm once as he passed. Sophie had already found the cake on the sideboard and was informing my sister-in-law's son about the pea garden, which apparently she'd decided was a topic worth revisiting. I sat down. My mother-in-law sat down across from me. She poured herself a glass of water this time instead of champagne. She looked at me once, quickly. Then down at the table. The proposal, she said. Very quiet. Meant only for me. At Merritt Holloway. Yes. A long pause. What did you say the issue was with the pricing? I looked at her. She was not looking at me. She was looking at her water glass with the expression of a woman who had decided to pick up something heavy and was not entirely sure she had the grip for it. It's positioned for enterprise scale, I said. But they're mid-market right now, even if they don't want to admit it. You'd need to tier it. She nodded very slightly. I can walk you through it, I said. If you'd like. This week sometime. Another pause. Longer. Okay, she said. I reached over and cut Sophie a slice of cake. My husband sat down beside me. Under the table, he found my hand. I let him hold it. Sophie ate her cake with great focus and reported that the buttercream was, and I quote, superior. My sister-in-law's son agreed, and they had a brief and passionate conversation about frosting that lifted something in the room in the way only children can manage, by caring completely about something small and asking everyone around them to care about it too. At some point during dessert, my mother-in-law looked at Sophie. How is second grade? She asked. Sophie looked up. She was cautious for a moment. Children file things, as I said, and then apparently decided to answer. Good. We're doing fractions. I like fractions. Do you? They make sense, Sophie said. Like once you see the pattern, they just make sense. My mother-in-law looked at her for a moment. Something moved across her face that I couldn't name. Your father was the same way, she said. With patterns. He could always see them. Sophie considered this information. Did he like fractions? He liked puzzles, all kinds. I like puzzles too. They looked at each other across the table. Something passed between them, new and careful, a first thread of something that might eventually hold weight, if treated with patience. Good, my mother-in-law said softly. Good. On the drive home, Sophie fell asleep in her car seat before we reached the highway. My husband drove. I watched the streetlights cross the window. You okay? He asked. Yeah. I thought about it. Actually, yes. I really am. I've been thinking about what I should have done differently. Me too, I said. Let's talk about it when she's not in the car. He reached over and squeezed my hand once. Okay. We drove. The city lights thinned out into suburb dark and the highway opened up, and Sophie breathed quietly in the back seat the way she did when she was deep asleep, slow and even, unbothered. I had spent 6 years trying to prove something to a woman who was, I now understood, just frightened of the things she couldn't control. She had been afraid of what I was before she knew what I was, and then she had been afraid of what I actually was, because it turned out to be more than she had built her opinion around. And people do not like to be wrong about things they've said out loud at dinner tables. I understood it. I didn't excuse it. Both things were true at once. Sophie made a small sound in her sleep. Shifted. Settled. I thought about her saying, I know I'm not behind. The absolute certainty of it. The way she hadn't needed me to reassure her, she just needed me to confirm what she already understood about herself. I thought about how we give children that. Without realizing. Without performance. Just by the steady accumulation of ordinary moments where they are treated like they matter. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I had made a quiet decision. Not about the Sunday dinners. Not about my mother-in-law or the proposal, or the careful, tectonic work of changing a family's patterns after years of them being set. Those were long processes and I understood they were long. The decision was simpler than all of that. I was done being quiet in ways that looked like smallness. That was all. That was the whole thing. I could be measured, and I could be patient, and I could still make room for the complexity of people who were afraid and expressed it badly, but I was done shrinking into spaces that were not the shape of me in order to make other people comfortable with the distance between who they thought I was and who I actually was. My husband unbuckled Sophie and carried her inside still sleeping. I stood in the driveway for a moment. The August night was warm and the neighbor's garden was making that particular late summer smell, cut grass and something floral. I had a good life, a genuinely, concretely, measurably good life, and more than the measurements. It was a life I had built with attention and intention and the kind of work that doesn't always look like work from the outside. I had let that be invisible for 6 years. I had thought that was generosity. I understood now that it was a mistake. Not because my worth required witnesses, it didn't. But because my daughter did have witnesses. She was watching. She was 7 and she was watching everything. And I needed her to see that quiet was not the same as unseen. And patience was not the same as permission. And love, real love, The kind worth having did not ask you to disappear to earn it. I went inside. My husband had left the kitchen light on for me. There was a glass of water on the counter, which was a small thing he did when he wanted to say something without saying it. I drank it. I turned off the light. Upstairs, Sophie was in her bed, and he was in the doorway watching her in the way you do when they're asleep and some part of you is simply glad they exist. I stood beside him. She's going to be fine, I said. She's going to be more than fine, he said. Yeah. I took his hand. She is. We stood there a while longer, the two of us in the doorway, watching our daughter sleep in her room in our house that nobody owned a piece of except us. Outside, the August night was doing what August nights do. The roses at my mother-in-law's house were blooming. Things planted in hard seasons sometimes do that, take root when you don't expect them to. Come up slow and then all at once. I was counting on that. I had been patient before out of uncertainty. I intended, going forward, to be patient out of choice. There was a meaningful difference between the two. One was waiting to be enough. The other was knowing you already were, and deciding anyway, because some things are worth the long work. Sophie made a small sound, something half-word, half-dream. I leaned in. You're okay, I whispered. You're okay, baby. Go back to sleep. She did. So did I.